G'day everyone. It's James Bennett Hullen for the JBH show, also known as the Just Another Bloke with a podcast. And today I have with me Sophie Anapliotis. I got your name right.
You did.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Very
Welcome to the show. So you would tell us a little bit about what you do, where you work, what's your story, that sort of stuff. We'll go straight into it.
Awesome. Well, Sophie Anapliotis. You said it well. Thank you. Most people call me Soph or Sophie Anna, which is what my online name is, I guess. My mother calls me Sophia. That's my real name. But no, it's Soph. And I run a property management business, an independent called Element Property Network that I started 5 years ago after being in the industry at that time for 10 years. So it's been 15 years all up since I've been doing property management.
Awesome. So you'd hope you're pretty good at it now.
Oh,
yeah.
You'd hope so.
And how big's the team over there? Do you have a crew under you? How?
Yeah, there's a team. There's 5 of us.
Yep.
So there's myself, 2 property managers. I have a property investment specialist, and then we also have a full-time admin.
Awesome. And are you into property investing too?
Yep.
Yep. Awesome. So you're walking the talk? No, talking the walk, or however it works.
Walking the talk. Yeah.
It's one of those days.
Yeah. My investment journey's been building wealth through property renovations.
Ah, awesome.
Yeah,
so flipping houses.
Not so much flipping. It's buying properties that people would be too scared to touch.
Yeah.
Living in them.
Yeah.
And renovating them as we live in them.
Yeah, wow.
And then when the time comes, rent them out or sell them.
Yep.
And now we're on to our next, and we just went and had a look at another one last night as our next potential project.
Yeah, cool. And where predominantly finding these houses?
Our first one was in Highton.
Yep.
And it was really one of those worst house on the best street, and it was the worst.
Yep.
And lived in that for quite a number of years. And then we renovated that, and then we used that money to then buy a farm.
Yep.
And then we're renovating a farmhouse at the moment. Have been there for the last 3 years. And then the next one will be for investment purposes. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. You enjoying the farm life?
It has its ups and downs. So when I always knew that I wanted to be on land. I didn't think that it was going to be as soon as what it was. It was more like the semi-retirement, ready for when I want to do the next stage of life, like the rescue and working with kids and all that sort of thing. But the opportunity came up and we took it. I do enjoy it when I have the time to spend there, but the business is a lot of my life at the moment. And because I don't have time to build a community out there and I'm always within Geelong, it has been a little bit isolating from that point of view.
So how far out are you?
Where it's only 35 minutes. So it's not so much the travel. The travel took a bit of getting used to because when you're living in the suburbs, everything's at your disposal.
Of course. Yeah.
When you go out rural, it's not so much. Not so much. So that was an adjustment within itself, which after 3 years you get used to that adjustment. But having the routine and the change of routine has definitely been something that I've had to get some used to, which does also take a bit of a mental and emotional toll as well if you're not ready for it. And also the community aspect. You don't realize how much of a community you have until you don't have that community anymore.
100%.
And I had that after living in our property for the last 7-8 years before we moved out there. But the stage of life that I'm at the moment, I'm not there very often. So it's really difficult to build that close community as what you would if you were at the stage of life of being home more often or having kids and all that and having a rural community.
Yeah.
You really need to spend the time there to build that community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. We're having the same thing at our place, my partner and I. We've got a spot up in Belpost Hill and we didn't really think it would ever be our forever home, but, the neighbours invite you over for dinner and that sort of stuff and you go over there and you have a few too many drinks, admittedly, but you just, like we walked over last time and we got to the front door and we're both just like, God, we've got so lucky with our neighbours. Like it's just such a good, tight-knit community.
It really, really makes a difference.
100%.
And I hear stories all the time of people saying how they've gotten to know their neighbours over the last 20, 30 years and you become a little family.
Yeah, correct.
Within itself. And that it takes time to build that community. And that's probably the part that I've struggled with the most.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. You feel isolated almost
Yeah.
from that. Yeah. So we'll go back a little further. Are you Geelong local?
Yes.
Yeah. So born and bred here and grew up here?
I was born in Central Vic.
Yeah.
And then when I was 3, I lived in Greece for a couple of months while my mum and dad had their separation.
Yeah.
And then after the separation, we then moved down to Queenscliff.
Yep.
And we've been in Geelong ever since. So I grew up down on the Bellarine Peninsula.
Yeah.
Grew up on boats. We had an uncle of mine that was a fisherman, and my mum also worked in the mussel farm there, doing the cleaning of the mussels and all that.
Ah, cool.
So most of my time, if possible, if it isn't at the farm or working,
it's on the water.
It's on the water.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So it's, well, I grew up in Portland, so it's a similar thing. It's a seaside town, that sort of vibe. It's a great place. So Greece, whereabouts in Greece were you?
So there's a little village just outside of Sparta called Elos.
Yep.
No one knows where it is.
Yep.
It's tiniest little village.
I know where Sparta is,
but
it's only because of the movie.
Yes, I know. This is Sparta. And my mum grew up there.
Yeah.
So we spent a little bit of time down there.
Wow.
And haven't been back since then.
Yep.
Except I did go back to Greece and did a educational trip for 20 days.
Cool.
And we went to Crete.
Oh, wow.
And Crete is beautiful. Yeah.
So living in Queenscliff, you consider that part of broader Geelong, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. There's some Queenscliff people that I know.
Technically, the council is,
it's the
technically
borough.
the borough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whereabouts on the Bellarine, just in and around Queenscliff? Have you moved around the Bellarine much, or is it?
So we grew up in Queenscliff.
Yep.
And then we were living in a rental property back then. And then the owner wanted to develop that land. So we wanted to stay on the Bellarine, but we were under social housing.
Okay.
So we actually got, and my mum would be able to, she would remember a lot more than me. I was quite young.
Yeah.
But we thought that we had a property lined up in Ocean Grove, but then that one ended up falling through. When we couldn't find affordable housing down there, we ended up living in Whittington.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so do you think that has that experience with housing and access to housing, has that sort of inspired you to go into real estate almost? Is that something that assisted with your interest in real estate, or where did that come from?
The real estate came up unexpectedly.
Yeah.
As soon as I was able to work, I started working. So I was working 3 jobs through school, and that was to help my mum, be the financial support and all that.
Yeah.
And then after I left school, I ended up getting offered a 2IC position at the restaurant or the fast food chain that I was working at.
Yeah.
And that's what really made me consider what I wanted to do next with my life.
Yeah, right.
I was like, do I want to smell like chicken for the rest of my life? Or and that was the question. I'm like, I love the fast-paced environment. I love the problem solving. I love the customer service side of it. I love the team side of it. It was actually one of my favorite jobs.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It was a fun job.
Yeah.
But did I want that as a career?
Probably not.
Probably not. And so I went to a recruiter and I said to them, these are all the things that I want, but not chicken.
Yep.
And what can you help me with? And that's how I ended up in a traineeship in real estate.
Yeah, awesome.
So it wasn't necessarily something that I grew up and went, I want to be a property manager. No property manager does that.
No.
We all fall into it. But after that, it has tied in a lot of my personal experience of knowing how much a home can feel like a safe haven. And we definitely take all of that into account when we're managing properties as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And so your real estate journey, where did you start out? Was it a local agency? And how, obviously, it took you until recently to start your own business.
Yeah.
What was your process? How did it all eventuate?
I started off as a property manager on the Bellarine Peninsula.
So straight into property management.
Yeah. Well, it was a traineeship, and with a traineeship, cheap labour, and you get thrown everything. Yeah.
Yeah. You're putting out signs. Yeah.
Essentially. So I got to learn every part of real estate, from working reception to admin. I got thrown a holiday rental book, which served me really well when I started the Airbnb side of the business. It's changed a lot, but that was my first real management experience in the holiday rentals. And then learned a bit of commercial, did sales, and then it wasn't until I was just about to finish up my traineeship and I started more assisting in the property management team. And it was the three of us. It was Anna and Marita, who I still talk to now. Anna's still one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And I started off as her assistant when we went into when I stepped into that property management position.
Yep.
And that was really that time that taught me that we tried out so many different ways to make sure that the team worked. And I went from, hey, let's see what happens if I'm the routine and maintenance manager, because that's a big role within itself. Or let's try me doing open for inspections and leasing, and let's try this. And just to be there to make sure that I could mold into what the property managers needed to make their lives easier for the customers.
Yep.
And that was about the first about 2 years. And then I ended up stepping into a property management role. But what had happened was I ended up burning out.
Yeah.
And I was very excited. I loved the job, absolutely loved the job, and I still love real estate today. But again, being very fast paced, and it is one of those industries that you're there to serve people and you're there to make sure that you're there to support them, all their needs. And with housing, it is their safe haven. And if people aren't feeling safe or secure or supported, it's very emotional. So you do take on a lot of emotional stress from people. At that time, I didn't understand how to have a filter.
Yeah.
I couldn't filter it out. I couldn't block out what emotional distress was coming from people. And all I wanted to do was solve problems for people. And I ended up with quite a lot of anxiety, to the point where I was blacking out. But at that point, I was still working 12-hour days because I wanted to make sure that everyone was still getting what they needed, the staff, the tenants, the owners, everything. And then I blacked out to the point where I was in a car crash. And I ended up taking a sabbatical, I guess.
Yeah.
Before that, actually, and I don't share this a lot, but I ended up leaving that agency thinking that it was the agency that was causing the problem, stress.
Yeah.
And I went to another agency, and all of the stress came with me. The blackouts were still there. The anxiety was still there. The depression was still there.
Yeah.
And then after 8 weeks, they asked me to leave.
Oh, wow.
And I got fired, essentially.
Yeah.
And because I was already anxious, not knowing what was going on, blacking out.
Probably didn't help much.
Didn't help much at all.
Yeah.
My self-esteem was very, very low at that point. It was a very, very confusing and stressful time. And then hearing that you're not good enough definitely doesn't help with that either.
Because you're saying that enough internally, you don't need it externally as well.
That's exactly right. And the story that I told myself already then got exacerbated because then the external world felt that too.
Of course.
In my eyes. It's not reality.
Yeah.
But that's how it felt at the time. And then it took me 18 months to get the confidence to come back into the industry. But during that time was the first time that I had taken a step back and said, what is it that's actually causing this? What is it that makes me happy? I'm just working all the time, but I'm never putting any energy into what I want to do, what makes me happy. I was 22, 23 at the time, didn't really travel that much except for going to Greece, didn't really have much of a life except for working. And at that time, I was still in that headspace of feeling like I needed to be a financial support and putting food on the table. So having that time back, even though it was a forced time, like your body tells you body tells you no, which Gabor Mate actually has a book all about that. If anyone's interested in reading about how the body will actually stop you when you're not stopping yourself. And that's when I really started to look inwards and work out what I could do to put myself build more resilience and put my mental health and my emotional health first.
Did you find that book at the time, or was this later? That you just,
No.
Yeah.
Well, what happened during that time, it was the first time that I actually asked myself, well, it wasn't me, it was my partner that said, what is it that you want to do? What is it that makes you happy? And I didn't have an answer. I just went to work. I came home. I slept. That was my life.
Yeah.
And that was the 18 months of me exploring what actually made me happy. So I spent time, I did work in between, of course, gotta live, right?
100%.
But I ended up volunteering at the animal shelter.
Yeah.
They then offered me a position, and I learnt how, I actually got a dog trainer's qualification while I was there as well, which no one expected.
Yeah.
I just certainly was not something that, as someone who never grew up with dogs or anything like that, I had my first dog when I moved out of home.
There you go.
But loved training him, loved spending time with him, and that happened. But then while I was going through that time of sort of wanting to understand myself a little bit more and where this was all coming from, that's when I ended up reaching out and asking for help.
Yeah.
So I went to a psychologist. They introduced me to something called cognitive behavioral therapy, which I'm sure a lot of people know now if they've ever gone into the psychological or emotional.
And if they haven't, what's the process?
Cognitive, to speak at it in just everyday terms, it's essentially being able to identify what fears you have, and then rewriting what that event means for you.
Sure.
So if you have a fear of flights, it's exposing yourself to that and then rewriting what that flight means to you.
Yeah.
And it's essentially learning to teach your brain that you are safe.
Yeah.
Or that one thing that you feared is now something that you can enjoy. Or even if you have those feelings of anxiety, it's actually comes from the same response of excitement.
Yeah, right.
So instead of having a fear of public speaking, for example, I now associate the feelings that I get inside, not from fear and anxiety, but it's actually feelings of excitement.
Yeah.
And we have control over what happens in that scenario, but it's how we are programmed and what we have learned as we've been growing up to how we actually experience certain events. And that's why one person will have a fear of spiders or something like that, and then one person will enjoy being around spiders. So everyone has a different,
those people are weird,
different experience.
Yeah, there's something wrong with those people, I will just say, but that's okay. We have space for everyone. It's okay.
We do have space for everyone.
Yeah. So you've become you've joined the animal shelter. What then drew you back to real estate? What
drew me back to real estate? It was actually Anna, who I was her assistant back at my first job. And it was all just timing, really. I felt like I was confident enough to get back. I knew that I loved property management. I knew that I loved real estate. And Anna called me and she said, we're looking for a property manager. Essentially said, cut the shit, get over yourself. I've already booked in an interview and you're coming in. Just send through your resume. And it just happened. I went back in, but because I had taken the step back and through that, going to a psychologist, getting help, understanding self, and I threw myself into personal development.
Yeah.
When you asked about where the books and all that sort of came from, I got heavily involved in wanting to understand self, and that's where a lot of personal development came into play as well.
Yeah.
And now I'm still very, very big on that, depending on what's happening in my life, whether it's to do with money and finance, or if it's to do, there's always ways to learn and always ways to improve.
Are you a reader or are you audiobooks?
Well, it depends where I am. If I'm in the car,
you're on the road,
reading.
Yeah, of course.
So a lot of audiobooks.
You need a Tesla so you can read on there.
It can read to me now.
Yeah. It'll turn the pages for you and everything.
Yeah.
No.
I love nothing more than being in a quiet room reading book.
Yeah.
But my time is most spent in the car.
Correct.
At the moment.
Yeah.
So audiobooks is definitely where it's at, and podcasts as well.
Awesome.
So that's where that all came about. But because of using that time to then understand what made me happy and what would put me in a scenario where I could continue to serve without burning out, it put me in a very, very different position. And when I went back into property management,
You were ready.
I was ready and I did things my way and not trying to be there for everyone without actually being there for myself first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So practically, how does that look? How is it different? What are the things that you changed day to day?
In the early stages, I realized that I was trying to, because when you grow up, you learn to be able to cope in certain ways. I was, give or take, a bit of an emotional support, or people, even though I was the youngest, my family would come to me with problems, and I was exposed to things quite young growing up, and that taught me to grow up really quickly and to try and be there and essentially try and save and be the savior and rescue everyone.
Yeah.
I brought that into my job in real estate as I started learning a little bit more about how it's a great it's a great intention to have that, but if it comes at the cost of your own emotional or mental health, then there needs to be other ways that you can keep serving without it. So without putting yourself in that position. So when I came back in, it was learning that skill of, I am here to support you. I am here to teach you how I can best help you.
Yep.
But there's also other resources and other tools that are available. So I went more into the education space, not only for owners but for renters as well. And there has to be boundaries in place. So yes, we are there to serve our clients, but they also need to understand what role we play as well, and to make sure that that boundary gets met.
Yeah.
Boundaries is a huge thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. And so is it something that you knew straight away you were going to set boundaries, or is it something that evolved as you sort of came back into the industry?
Oh, evolved. Yeah. I'm still learning now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything that I don't think that there's ever a time where you've learnt everything that you can learn.
No, of course. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, absolutely don't know what you don't know.
Okay.
And it really was when I started the business that it was the big punch in the face of, like, if anyone ever wants to learn about themselves, start a business.
Yeah, because it's all on you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there were times where and how I got led to starting my own business was, I always felt, now that I had I was looking at things differently. I was saying, hey, like, if we did this in the department, or if we shaped it this way, or if a property manager did this, then wouldn't this be a better way for the clients, and it would relieve stress for us and all that. And I felt like I didn't find an agency that really thought the way that I did. But I was also seeing a lot of burnout, a lot of stress, and a lot of things that property managers like me went through. I was seeing it happening right in front of me, which made me feel quite scared that I didn't feel like I could make a difference.
Yeah.
But I just didn't have the tools or the confidence to make a difference at the time, which is very different now.
Yeah.
So when I started the business, it was to be able to give property managers a space of understanding and giving them the tools and resources that they need, so then they can be their best self.
Yeah.
But through that journey, I also learned a lot of things about myself.
Of course.
And how I'm great in a lot of ways when it comes to being a boss and a people manager.
Yeah.
And a lot of ways that not great either. And you do. You continue to learn as you go.
Yeah.
And understanding that even the people pleasing tendencies that I had back when I was first in the industry, because I was learning how to be a team leader and a team manager when the team started building, a lot of those default tendencies actually came back, and I started people pleasing again. Right. So different scenarios are going to trigger default responses.
And how did you recognize that you were doing that? Was it obvious to yourself, or did you need that to be pointed out to you? Or
it needed to be pointed out to me.
Yeah.
But it happened in really, I'm not going to say horrible ways, but because I didn't have the tools and skills that I needed at that particular time, I was supporting my staff in ways that was not helpful for the business.
Yeah.
So I would, if my staff were coming, and I always have that, if you're ever feeling like something is wrong, come to me, let me know, so then I can know how to best support you. But when there's a lot of personal stuff going on, or there's a lot of stuff going on that I can't control and I can't give resources to, the boundaries weren't up. I wanted to save them. I wanted to make sure that they were
Helped.
okay. And it comes to that point where you realize that you can't help them.
Yeah.
And that sucks sometimes. And there were people that had to step away from the business to focus on themselves, whatever they were going through personally at the time.
Yep.
And it went back into that default of I wasn't good enough to help them. And then for that, I then started going, okay, how is that serving my ultimate goal of the business?
Correct.
Like if I'm continuing to put everyone else's needs instead of the others, like instead of the business, there's not going to be a business here to actually support people.
Yeah.
So I had to go back to my roots and really understand what boundaries do I need to put in, because I already had that down pat with the clients. I'd already learned that in being a property manager with the owners and the tenants, but I didn't have the experience and the skills with the staff and the team. And so that was a big learning lesson for me, which I'm really starting to see the other side of it now.
Yeah. Awesome. So it was an 18-month break. Then you went back into real estate for another agency.
Yep.
Then how long did it take for you to start your business?
I was in the industry for 8 years.
Yep.
And then I ended up working for a B2B agency.
Yep.
Doing digital products, essentially, just utilizing AI and digital products within real estate to try and make their life easy.
Yep.
It was that experience that I realized for me is that all I kept talking about was property management and real estate.
Yeah,
Even when I was sidestepped into a B2B, I was always talking about it and I loved it. But what I also recognized is that technology was there to try and make our lives, or to try and make our jobs easier and better.
Yeah.
But the way that it was being sold, or the way that it was being used within real estate, is that they were wanting AI or technology to essentially replace what they're doing.
Yeah.
Instead of picking up the phone, building those relationships, having that communication with the tenants and owners, or even vendors and sellers. The human side.
Yeah.
Technology is there to enhance the
better
experience, not there to replace. And when I came back into the industry, I wanted to do two things. Was one, give property managers a space where they could thrive, and also teach that we are there to make sure that the human experience stays the human experience.
100%.
And I really went back to old school service, but then with that innovation and tweak of using technology and AI to make our lives easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And how quickly did it, well, I mean, obviously you've got a fairly large network in Geelong. You know a lot of people in the industry. Was that something that assisted in the business growth? Was early on, or was it really you just sort of took it on yourself and...
I just took it on myself.
Yeah.
Well, when we think about it, and there was one part that I didn't sort of add in there. I did, when I was working for the B2B business, I was also doing consulting as well.
Okay.
So there was about a 2.5 to 3 year period that I wasn't working as a traditional property manager.
Yeah.
So I wasn't offering property management service. I didn't have a customer base to come into when I started the business.
Yeah.
It was purely building that word of mouth and building that network. And that's what I did when I started launching the business, was just get into the community, show people what I'm passionate about, show things how I want to do things differently, and our approach to real estate, our approach to how we see property management through the eyes of an investor and a renter as well.
Because you understand both sides.
Understand both sides. We just want everyone to feel safe and supported, right?
Yeah.
So I was just passionate about what I wanted to achieve as my own version of success in property management.
Yeah.
And turns out people wanted that.
Yes,
so
100%.
the business started growing naturally. I did utilize social media as well, so local networking and also social media to start spreading the word, which was something that I never had done previously. Social media, if if we didn't need to have mobile phones, I would not have a mobile phone. I'm not. I would prefer to just be completely
landline.
Yep. Or just completely offline.
Yeah, okay. Offline.
Yeah.
Totally offline.
Totally offline, which you can't do when you're running
Anymore.
a business.
No, unfortunately.
So.
Although there was this one lady in that I've heard of that she insisted on paying via check, via post for our business. And we're just like, how are we going to, how does that work at all? But eventually the letter arrived and the check didn't bounce and it all worked fine, I guess. So she can continue doing that.
Funnily enough, it was only 2017 or 2018 that checks and money orders started phasing out.
Yeah.
It really wasn't that long ago.
No.
And we had one of our tenants that didn't like using email or didn't know how to use email.
Yeah.
And when that happened, I had to go, oh, well, do checks even exist anymore? Like, how do I do this? I had to call my bank manager and be like, what do I do here?
Yeah.
Because tech has moved so quickly that it just feels like a whole lifetime ago.
No, I was lucky back when I worked for my dad in his pharmacy. There was, very briefly, Dad. He didn't fire me. I just didn't want to pick up the bad habits that he had. No, I'm
sure.
Yeah, don't tell anyone.
It's a good story.
Don't tell anyone, Dad.
Let's dive into that one.
But in the pharmacy, we'd have people come in and they'd still pay with checks. So I was like, okay, cool. We've got to take it this way and learned how to process it. But that's not something that you put on a resume anymore. I know how to take check payments. It's like no one cares. It's an old technology, but it's cool that people still do it the old way. But no, it's just funny how things evolve and change so quickly. I think there was something that I wanted to talk to you about was how you have been dealing with in your business the different sort of prop tech things that come and go. Obviously, you've been very aware of things like online auctions and those sort of things. How have you found navigating that space and adding, obviously you're not so much in the sales side or at all, but navigating the prop tech in the property management space? How do you recognize what's more of a fad and what's, going to be a long-term technology?
I love tech. I'm a very, very early adopter. When anything new is coming out, I want to figure out how it's working and how it's going to make everyone's lives easier, not just the property manager, but the end consumer as well.
Yeah.
Big believer that tech can be there to make our lives easier. So when I first started the business, and it is a lesson that I had to learn as well, I'm very big at going against the grain. I don't like what everyone else is doing.
Yep. And
subconsciously, I would go out of my way to make sure that I'm doing something that everyone else isn't doing.
Wow.
I know, right? A surprise. So when I first started, I went, all right, I'm going to go with the newest technology that has the most advanced, back-end technology, great for customer experience, great for tenant experience. But what I found was, and I loved that program and what we were using. But as the business grew, it was lacking. And that's when I had to go, all right, there's innovation, but then I also need to look into the traditional aspects of what softwares are being used, how we can utilize that. I ended up changing software to the one that everyone else uses.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
And but now it's finding the mix between what's going to serve the property manager and what's also going to serve the tenants and the renters as well. And that's a really hard one to find in tech. There isn't, in any industry, you'll always have people give the feedback that there is never one software that does it all.
Yeah,
and you have to have plugins and APIs and integrations to just make one thing work, which is super, super annoying. So what we try to do is to build out knowledge bases to make sure that we can work it as efficiently as possible. But I'm always looking at what new tech is coming out. And like, for example, there's a lot of people that are within property management that are still a little bit adverse to instant rental payments. So it's essentially a third-party payment that when the tenant pays, holds it into a wallet, and then it instantly pays the owners out instead of the traditional way of coming into a trust account, receipting it, waiting until end of month, and then dispersing the funds.
Yeah.
But it's a great technology if it's utilised well, and if they know how to proactively use it in the back end to make sure that issues aren't happening for both the property managers and the tenants and owners.
Yeah, because that sounds like it would be difficult around the compliance side. Obviously, there's a lot of compliance around
the compliance side is sorted because you still have to take a bond through the trust.
Gotcha.
So that's a whole different process within itself, and they've sorted that part. But yeah, there's still a little bit of, a little bit of that uncomfortable feeling around it still. But tech is moving very, very fast.
Yeah.
In that way. Yeah.
Awesome. And being on the leading edge of technological innovation, being aware of it and that sort of stuff is obviously part of what you do. But something else that you do that I'm aware of is that you're in a lot of the mentor spaces in property management. You being a mentor, how have you found yourself? How have you found being a mentor to other people who are newer in the industry, or people who have even been in the industry longer than you have, but you're still giving them advice and tips?
Well, it's a really funny one that it didn't happen because I set myself out to be like, I want to become a real estate trainer or a real estate consultant. And it's something that I don't actively advertise either. But what I want to do is help make the industry better. Yeah. One property manager at a time. Whether they work for me and are training with me or whether they're working somewhere else, I don't care. As long as they're getting the support and advice that they need. It's not just newer property managers, and it's actually hardly newer property managers that I'm talking to. It's other seasoned property managers that we can bounce off each other to make sure that we are giving each other the right amount of support in different areas that we're focused on. So I have one guy who's been doing this for 25 years. He is the person to go to for VCAT, like tribunal and magistrates court.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that ever comes up that I'm unaware of, I'll go to him.
Yeah.
But my specialty is making sure that we set up the tenancy in a way that avoids disputes.
Yeah, right.
So I'm never in VCAT. I'm never in magistrates court.
Touch wood.
Touch wood, yeah. And the only time, it doesn't mean that I'm not skilled in that area. It just means that we put all of the things in place to avoid that happening.
Good.
And so they will come to me and go, hey, like, what things do you put in
What have you done?
place? Yeah, like, what do you do there? And so I love that I'm able to help people in that way.
Yeah.
And there's also, checklists and all that sort of thing that we can help with as well. But how I started helping people was talking about sustainable business models. Because I started noticing, working in property management and business development, that a lot of bigger agencies were focused on growing really quickly. And that was my role before I started the business, was doing business development. But what I started noticing is that there was a lot of promises and just getting the deal across the line, but it just wasn't getting delivered.
Yeah, no thought for the back end.
No thought for the back end because their job was done. It then got past the property manager, but the handover was causing so much stress on the property managers because proper due diligence wasn't done. The owners were overpromised, and then the property managers couldn't deliver, or they didn't even know what was promised.
Yeah, right.
And so it was great being able to grow businesses really quickly. And in one agency, we grew a client base of 130 in 7 months.
Yeah.
But they weren't being sustained. So the retention wasn't there. And the part that I love most about the business is the retention. Like, growth is great, but retention and service.
Yeah, looking after existing relationships.
So much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously you take great pride in your mentor space. You seem to enjoy it. I've seen you in action when you're chatting to people who are asking questions, and you do take genuine enjoyment out of it, I think. Is it something that you would start to publicly advertise, or is it just sort of we're just doing it on the side sort of thing? It's not like an active...
Yeah. I think that thought process comes and goes.
Yeah.
Waves.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older and more mature from a business perspective, I am very big on doing one thing, focusing on one thing and doing it really, really well.
Yep.
I think that being able to walk the walk before being able to talk it is
Sure.
super, super important. As much as I have respect for a lot of mentors in our industry and other industries, there are a lot of people that know how to teach, but when the practice is being done, they may fall short.
Yeah.
Or because they don't have they're not in the industry anymore and they've just gone into the training space. It's making sure that they're staying up to date with the challenges that are having. So when I first started doing the growth and strategy consulting, that was before I started the business. And I was saying to owners, hey, this is how to grow, this is how to do this is how to do that. But I wasn't understanding all of the impacts of running a business actually means. You're getting pulled in 20 different directions, and business growth is just one of those 20 things.
Yeah, correct.
And so starting the business actually gave me a lot more insight and depth into what it means to build a sustainable business that I didn't have that experience in before.
Yeah.
So when I'm giving advice now, it's coming from a very, very different space. Yes, I do want to go into mentorship.
Yeah.
And consulting and things like that. I still do it, but I don't publicly advertise it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's from the perspective of improving the industry rather than, hey, look at me.
Yeah.
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 That's
even
so true to your character.
And even though I started the business, one of the most uncomfortable things was selling myself.
Yeah.
Being able to hide behind a franchise and selling the franchise was very comfortable.
Of course.
Being out there and selling yourself and what you do as a service, very, very uncomfortable that you have very, very different ballgame.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a sales team or a sales arm behind you and you're just there on your own with zero clients, it definitely exposes a lot of fears and uncertainties.
Yeah.
But now, like even in the last 12 months, so end of 2023 to end of 2024, we ended up doubling the business in that 12-month period.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's really cool. So obviously those fears and anxieties, you've now got systems in place to cope with them and personally deal with that stuff. Do you find that people in your business also have those moments and you're there to support them?
Absolutely.
Or
Yeah.
Awesome.
Every single person has a fear or an anxiety that is true to them.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
And you're there to provide the safe space for them in the workplace.
Yeah.
With boundaries, of course. So obviously with you now working actively to avoid burnout and that sort of stuff, I'm sure that there's now an element of work-life balance. What do you do in your spare time? What's outside of Sophie look like? Outside of work Sophie look like?
Yeah. I am still a workaholic.
Yeah.
But I'm super passionate about it.
Oh, good. Okay.
So, but I've had to learn to listen to my body and tell and know when to stop or when to slow down. And that has been a challenge in a lot of ways. I now make sure that I take 2 times off every year. So March and August every year, I'm away.
Yep.
Just
awesome.
Happens. That didn't happen until last year though.
Yeah, right.
So it was like I put so much time into the business of being like, I can never be away.
Yeah,
like
of course.
The staff always need me, the clients always need me. And then as you start to build different skills and put different boundaries in place, you learn that you're really not as important as what you make yourself out to be. I went through that humbling experience. And because I started off running the business as myself and it was solely me, I had to go through that transition of being there for the team more than what I'm there for anyone else. So it was really empowering them to be able to make the decisions rather than having to rely on me all the time.
Yeah.
And that came from having a certain level of control in the first years of business that I can't, like you can't control everything that happens in the business, and that's where it's really nurturing the team.
Yeah.
But that's also given me the space to go, cool, now I can get myself into a routine that really continues to serve me. So if I'm not out in nature, I'm usually out either camping, four-wheel driving, kayaking.
Yeah, right.
Anything to do with water.
Yeah.
So fishing.
Of course.
Just grounding. I love doing gardening. I love cooking. Very just basic stuff.
Yeah.
Very cathartic for me. and spending time with my animals as well.
And are you like, you have your repertoire of favourite things to cook, or do you like to explore new cuisines, or?
I have a thing that I don't like anything going to waste.
Yeah.
So Sundays, I call them my no alarm days.
Yeah, right.
It is when no one can bother me. It is my day for myself. I've got provisions in the business to make sure that can happen, like after hour calls and stuff.
Sure, yep.
And all that. And it is my day where I can just be in the kitchen and go, all right, what am I cooking today? So it could be, what did I do over the weekend? Protein balls and just, this, I actually used AI and said, these are all the ingredients that I got in my pantry in my kitchen.
Yep.
What can I cook with this? And they're like, here you go. So slow cook stuff. I don't really have any one meal that I'll cook.
Yeah.
It's just whatever. Yeah.
Neither, but that's just because I'm not a good cook.
Yeah.
With your garden, is it like a veggie garden? Do you grow to eat, or is it like a?
It's a work in progress.
Garden? Yeah.
When we were in Highton, we were there for 6 or 7 years, and we had a full permaculture setup.
Oh, cool.
So any time of the year, there was always something growing, which was amazing. When you move to farmland, there was nothing growing there. So we've actually got a paddock at the front that we're building out as a full food forest. Oh, we've started off with trees, and then we've started with veggie patches and all that, and it's
cool.
Yeah, but a lot of that was getting the soil to the point where it was ready to take it on. Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah.
And do you like the idea of living off the grid, or is it just an independence thing, or is it just for the fun and the love of doing it?
I love living, like the thought of being self-sufficient and being energy efficient and all that has always been something that
you're passionate about. Yeah.
Environmental sustainability. You don't have to be on land to be to be sustainable at all.
Yep.
We were actually more sustainable in Highton than what we are in Shelford because we've had to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
After spending years of
cultivating
and and all that. So you don't need a lot of space. You just need to look at permaculture practices. But even the way that we've done our renovations and designs has all been designed around passive home and passive home. Yeah, so we hardly have to use the heater.
Yep.
Hardly have to use cooling, and it just stays cool all year round.
So what have you done to do that, if you're happy to go into that? Because not a lot of people, I mean, everyone's presumably pro-environmental sustainability, but there's not a lot of people that know how.
Yeah.
So what are the things that you've done at the house to make it that way?
Well, the way that we designed the Highton home and making that efficient was very different to what we've had to do with the farmhouse.
Yeah.
When we did Highton, a lot of the work was already done because there was brick and all that. We just had to insulate it properly.
Yep.
Put proper insulation and things like that within the roof. The different bats that you can get, such as, you know what I mean when I say I say bats, you can get different thicknesses that help with retaining heat and cooling.
Yep.
And so if you don't have anything in your roof cavities, then you're just going to have heat and cool leave all the time because it rises. So once we had done that, we then also utilised the rebates that were available at the time, and we got solar panels.
Awesome.
We got a battery backup as well. The only thing that we didn't do was get bore water. So we could have actually been completely off the grid.
Oh, wow.
And we decided not to do the bore water because we would have had to dig down too deep to get clean enough water.
Yeah.
So, and water's quite cheap relative to everything else. And then because we had the solar and the batteries there, the next stage, if we hadn't sold it, so we did end up selling that and using that equity to buy the farm.
Yep.
We would have, there were 2 gas appliances left. And once they were gone, we were going to replace them with electric.
Yep.
And we made that decision not to replace them right away because around efficiency as well, you don't want to just get rid of things that are still usable.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
Working.
So it's about reusing, recycling. So
ain't broke.
If it ain't broke, don't replace it, right?
Rid of it,
So with the farmhouse, we were really working with a different shell.
So I'm assuming it's an older property.
Older property, 70s. The Highton home was actually older.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
This one is late 70s, early 80s. The Heighton one was 60s, but it was just a different build. There was brick and all that.
Yep.
This one was just timber frame, really, really simple frame. But we were able to get in underneath and actually insulate the flooring.
Oh, cool.
And you know how you got those foam panels?
Yeah.
That go into what's it called, like industrial fridges and things like that for commercial. That's how they keep fridges really cold.
Yeah, right.
Or keep things really hot, I guess.
There you go.
And so if you put that underneath in between the floorboards and the subfloor,
does the same thing.
then that retains.
Oh.
Yeah, so it stops stuff from getting
Yeah, cool.
So,
cool.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff is also sort of ties into property management because energy efficiency standards are all getting updated, which are all coming in at the end of the year. Yay. So already having that knowledge has also been really good for when we're giving advice and support to our investors to be like, hey, maybe look at some draft proofing or maybe do this or maybe look at this rebate or maybe, do all that as well.
It's great. So the farmhouse, you have solar out there yet or not yet? Not yet.
Nope.
Cool.
And it's a cost thing. Like the rebates aren't as good as what they used to be.
No.
So we're looking at how we can use what we have in the budget that we have to make things as efficient as possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
Realistic planning.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. No, cool. And the farm, is that somewhere you're going to be for a long time, or is that somewhere that's not going to be, or do you not know yet?
Right now, if you were asking me 10 years down the track, it would be yes.
Okay.
Right now, we're not 100% sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Open to options.
Might come in. We might end up renting it out.
Yeah.
Might end up. I've started getting it ready for short-term accom, just in case we want to be able to have it as a sort of bit of both.
Yeah, correct.
As well. Or if the right price came along, then we would sell it, and then when the time came, find something that
you're ready to.
Yeah, we've got another 30 years of our life really before thinking about what our ultimate retirement plan is.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know where I'm going to be in 2 years' time.
Correct.
Come on, James.
Where I'm going to be in 6 months' time.
No,
but No, awesome. Cool. So we went back a little bit to, what does Sophie do outside of work? And your answer was more work and some gardening and some other things.
It's a blend.
What else do you do? Is there anything else? Are you still volunteering at the animal shelter when you can, or is there anything in that space that you're still doing, or?
So I do take in dogs.
Yeah.
And help them. So most recent one, so my ultimate goal is to have a retirement village for dogs.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
And instead of them ending up in the shelter after they've either lost their family member or however they end up in that scenario, it's giving them a space where they can live out their last days
in a nice environment.
Having the best last days of their life.
Yeah, nice.
We do a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And then one of the other things that I do want to do as a sort of next phase of life is also helping younger kids with being able to give them the tools and resources that I wish that I had at a younger age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there a particular organisation that you're involved with to assist with that, or is it just more your...
Right now, my contribution to that is by giving to mental health organisations that help with promoting mental health practices, such as Lifeline. So Lifeline is a local one.
Yep.
We also do Black Dog Institute.
Yep.
Friend in Me is another organisation that is a local organisation to help those families in need as well. And that's as the phase of life that I'm in right now, being very business focused.
Of course.
My contribution is through that.
Awesome.
But that will change as my life changes as well.
Yeah, of course. So with the dogs, how many have you taken in and looked after? I feel like that'd be really tough, like just taking in the old dogs or is it nice, I guess?
I guess I just see it in a way that if we're there to give them a loving home until the time comes, then it's much better than being in a stressful environment. And we've taken in, over the course of the last 8-9 years we've taken in puppies and trained them up
Yeah.
to be ready to be rehomed.
Yeah.
Because the biggest reason why most dogs end up getting returned to a shelter is because they're not trained.
Yeah. Training issues.
So it's not to do with the dog, it's got to do with the human, but we can't really control the human, so we try to give the dog the best
shot.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So we've done that. We've taken in my first ever rescue was a 7-year-old dog that was found on a site that was about to be demolished.
Oh, wow.
They were tied inside a shed and very emaciated to the point where they had to get blood transfusions. Right. Her name was River.
Yeah.
River had seizures. So we learnt about what it was like to have a dog with seizures, and they were only little ones.
Yeah.
We didn't even realise.
Yeah, right.
Until we were like, oh, what is that weird thing that she's doing? And we realised that, she had seizures. And being able to see, like, we brought her back to, to health and all that.
Yeah.
And then she ended up living in Queensland.
Yeah, right.
For the first couple of years on my birthday, I would get a photo of River saying happy birthday. So
nice.
It feels like an area that you would see a lot of hurt. And within the animal shelters, 100%. Like you do see a lot of things that you wish weren't happening.
Yeah, of course.
And shelters only exist because of humans, right? So
sad reality.
That is a sad reality. But the rescue side of it and being able to help animals in that time is quite a nice feeling. And one of the most recent old boys that we took in, who was 14-year-old Pom.
Yep.
Name was Vincenzo. He actually came from a family member.
Yeah, right.
That couldn't take care of him anymore, and they still absolutely loved him, but circumstances change, and that's okay. And a month in, we went and got a check, and we found out that he had chronic kidney failure.
Oh no!
And we went through all the options and decided that he could continue to live out the best days of his life until the time came.
Yeah. And
he was with us for another 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And the owners were actually there for the last moments and all that. And now he's, peacefully, but he absolutely loved being on the farm. He was an absolute menace. He used to
Vincenzo, I can't imagine
Vincenzo, little Chen. And he used to sneak up every day to the back paddock. So we've got 3.5 at the front and 10 at the back.
Yeah, right.
And he used to sneak up there every day, and he always thought that no one knew. So we ended up burying him in his favourite spot where he would go and sneak to every day. So it's just so it's a
nice thing. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I couldn't imagine it. It'd be so, I immediately, as soon as I see an old dog, my partner's a vet, so she deals with it all the time. Yeah. But as soon as I see an old dog, if they've got a little grey beard, it's just like, it's like, okay. Yeah.
I just think it's the best years of their life.
Yeah. Yeah. They're comfortable. They're usually pretty well behaved, easy to manage.
Yeah.
Well, some of them, but yeah.
Yeah.
They're manageable, I guess, most of the time. Awesome. So, I guess we're sort of coming towards the end, so I might move into quick-fire questions. Favorite self-help or professional development book you've ever read?
The best book that I started with was, there's a classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Great book.
That was a really, really good one.
Yes.
There was another one called The Power of Habit.
Yep.
And that was probably my favorite one to start off with.
Okay. I haven't read that one. Who's it by? Do you know?
Doohill.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And that one was more impactful?
It was more impactful because it really showed the psychology behind what a habit is.
Yep.
And that you can't get rid of a habit.
Yep. It's very hard to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you just can't do it.
You can't do it. You have to replace it with another habit.
Oh, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. I'm going to have to read that book. Can I borrow it off you?
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite breed of dog? Now
hairless.
Hairless?
After having Border Collie, anything hairless is great.
I've got a Border Collie. I agree. No, I love you, Winston. I promise. It's okay. Your hair is
great,
fine.
But
far out.
Well,
they drop hair everywhere. And it is like suit jackets and everything. They just attach themselves and it's just locked in forever. And I go to a networking meeting sometimes on a Tuesday and I walked up to someone and he goes, "You've just got a little hair on your shoulder." And I'm like, I hugged the dog on the way out and got me. Anyway, so how are people best to connect with you?
They can connect on social media.
Yep.
Or they can connect with me on the website, which is elementpropertynetwork.com.au.
Awesome. And social media handle?
Sophie Anna.
Awesome.
Yep.
Sophie Anna. Not the full name, just the shortened one, the one that everyone can say. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Do you have any final tidbits, anything else that you want to say before we finish up? Quote of the day, anything like that?
Quote of the day. Just the biggest lesson that I ever learned is to focus on your own happiness first.
Yep. Awesome. Awesome. I think a lot of people can relate to that. So thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you for being the first female on the podcast, which was something that you said as soon as I called you. So episode 7, Sophie Anapliotis, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.